The ballroom was magnificent, dripping with crystal chandeliers and gold-trimmed mirrors that reflected the cream of high society. I stood at the top of the marble staircase in my custom-designed pink gown, blush silk that shimmered like rose petals in morning dew, and watched my sister Veronica's face drain of all color as she realized what I'd done. She was wearing red, crimson red, blood red, the exact shade she'd stolen from my makeup collection 100 times in my past life. The same shade she'd worn to my engagement party, the one that was supposed to be mine. When she'd seduced my fiancé and announced their relationship to 300 guests while I stood there in a modest pink dress she'd convinced me to wear. But this wasn't that life. This was my second chance, and I'd spent 6 months orchestrating this perfect moment. Veronica's red lipstick, the expensive Dior shade she'd lifted from my vanity just this morning, thinking I wouldn't notice, clashed violently with her scarlet gown, the dress I'd accidentally shown her in a fashion magazine, gushing about how it would be perfect for the Ashford Charity Gala. The dress she'd immediately bought in secret, planning to outshine me like she always did. What Veronica didn't know was that the fashion industry had pivoted. The theme for tonight, announced just 3 days ago to exclusive guests, was Spring Awakening. Pastels, soft pinks, lavenders, mint greens. Every woman in the room looked like a delicate flower. Except Veronica. She looked like a fire truck at a ballet. I caught her eye and smiled. Gentle, sweet, forgiving. The same smile I'd given her 1,000 times in my previous life when she'd sabotaged me. Then I descended the stairs as photographers' cameras flashed, capturing me at my most radiant while my sister stood frozen in social horror. "Lily!" My mother rushed over, her face twisted in that familiar expression of disappointment reserved only for me. "Where is your sister? She should be here for the photographs." I widened my eyes innocently. "She's right there, Mother." I gestured to where Veronica stood near the champagne fountain, trying to hide behind a marble column. "Doesn't she look striking?" My mother's lips thinned as she took in Veronica's outfit. For once, that disapproval wasn't aimed at me, and the satisfaction was sweeter than I'd imagined. But this was just the opening move. The real game had started 6 months ago, on the day I opened my eyes in my childhood bedroom and realized I was 17 again. The ceiling of my bedroom had a water stain in the shape of a butterfly. I'd spent countless hours staring at it in my first life, crying, neighing over Veronica's latest cruelty, wondering why my parents loved her more. When I opened my eyes that morning 6 months ago and saw that butterfly stain, my first thought was that I'd survived the car crash. My second thought was that I'd died in the crash and this was hell. It took me 3 days to accept the truth. I was 28-year-old Lily Chen, successful prosecutor, dead from a car accident my sister had caused by cutting my brake lines. And I was also 17-year-old Lily Chen, high school senior, living in her childhood home with a second chance to change everything. The memories of my past life hit me in waves. Veronica stealing my thesis in college and publishing it under her name. Veronica seducing David, my fiancé, 3 weeks before our wedding. Veronica convincing our parents to give her my inheritance from grandmother Chen, telling them I was financially irresponsible when she was the one drowning in gambling debts. Veronica, always Veronica, taking everything that should have been mine while I was too naive and forgiving to stop her. The final betrayal had been the worst. I'd discovered evidence that our father's company was being embezzled by his business partner. I'd spent months building a case, planning to present it at the quarterly board meeting. But Veronica had found my files. She'd presented the evidence herself, taking credit for my work. Father had been so proud. He'd given her a position on the board, the position I'd been working toward my entire career. 2 weeks later, my brakes failed on the highway. I'd spun out and crashed into a barrier at 80 miles per hour. As I died, I'd seen Veronica's car in my rearview mirror, just sitting there, watching. Now I was back. And this time, I knew exactly who Veronica was. That first morning, I went to school in a daze. Everything was familiar, yet foreign. The hallways smaller than I remembered, my classmates' faces young and unmarred by adult stress. And there was Veronica, holding court at her locker, surrounded by her usual crowd of admirers. She was beautiful. I'd forgotten how beautiful. At 17, she had perfect porcelain skin, glossy black hair that fell to her waist, and our mother's delicate bone structure. She wore a red silk blouse that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and her lips were painted in that signature crimson shade. Red had been her color. In my past life, she'd owned it, made it hers. She'd worn red to every important event, commanding attention, while I'd faded into the background in beiges and pale pinks. Lily! She spotted me and waved, her smile bright and false. Come here, Jessica was just saying how cute you'd look with short hair. Don't you think she'd look adorable with a pixie cut? Her friends giggled. I remembered this conversation from my first life. I'd gone home and cut my hair that evening thinking Veronica was trying to help me. The pixie cut had been a disaster. My face was too round, my features too soft. I'd looked like a child, while Veronica's long hair had made her look sophisticated and mature. It had taken 2 years to grow out, 2 years of looking immature and unprofessional at school events and family gatherings. In my previous life, I'd learned too late that Veronica studied me like a predator studies prey. She knew exactly how to diminish me, what suggestions would make me less attractive, less confident, less threatening to her position as the family favorite. I love my long hair, I said simply, touching the straight black length that fell to my mid-back. I think I'll keep it. Veronica's smile flickered. Oh, well, if you're sure, I just thought, I'm sure. I walked past her to my own locker, feeling her confused stare on my back. That was the first crack in her reality. Veronica was used to me being compliant, eager to please, desperate for her approval. The old Lily would have made the appointment at the salon that afternoon. The new Lily had other plans. I spent the first month quietly observing and planning. I couldn't just expose Veronica immediately. I'd learned in my career as a prosecutor that revenge required evidence, timing, and airtight strategy. Move too fast and the guilty slip away. Move too slow and they destroy the evidence. My family situation was exactly as I remembered. My father, Richard Chen, was the CEO of Chen Technologies, a mid-sized tech company he'd built from the ground up. My mother, Margaret, came from old money and had never worked a day in her life. They'd had me first, then Veronica 3 years later after my mother's difficult pregnancy that had nearly killed her. From that point on, Veronica had been precious, the miracle baby, the child who'd survived against all odds. I was just the first draft, the practice run. The favoritism had been subtle at first, longer bedtimes for Veronica, nicer birthday parties, better Christmas gifts. But it had grown more blatant over the years. When we both wanted piano lessons, they could only afford one daughter's tuition. Veronica got the lessons. When we both applied to the same prestigious summer program and I got in while Veronica was waitlisted, they'd called in favors to get her admitted, then couldn't afford to send us both. Veronica went. I stayed home. In my first life, I'd internalized it all. I'd believed I was less worthy, less special, less lovable. I'd tried harder and harder to earn their affection, which had only made them respect me less. Veronica had learned early that she could take anything she wanted from me, and I'd let her. Not this time. My first move was to secure my financial future. I remembered the stock market movements from my previous life, at least the major ones. I'd started investing at 25 after law school, and I'd watched certain companies explode. Now I had a chance to get in early. I had $3,000 saved from birthdays and odd jobs. I opened a brokerage account online using a fake ID I purchased from a senior who owed me a favor. I'd tutored him through calculus. I invested everything in 3 companies I knew would soar: a small electric car startup that would revolutionize the industry, a biotech firm on the verge of a breakthrough, and a social media platform that would soon go viral. Within 3 months, my $3,000 had become $30,000. By month 6, I had over $200,000. I moved the money to offshore accounts, covering my tracks carefully. This wasn't about the money. I could have made millions if I'd wanted. This was about having resources for the war ahead, because Veronica's first major attack was coming, and I needed to be ready. The school year progressed, and I watched Veronica's confusion grow as I refused to play my assigned role. When she borrowed my favorite sweater and returned it with a mysterious stain, I didn't cry or complain. I just bought a new one with my secret funds and never mentioned it. When she started dating Marcus Kim, the boy I'd had a crush on in my first life, I congratulated her with genuine pleasure. I remembered Marcus would turn out to be a compulsive liar and small-time con artist. She was welcome to him. But I wasn't passive. I was strategic. I noticed everything Veronica did and everyone she hurt. She'd always been cruel to people she perceived as beneath her, but I'd been too self-absorbed in my own pain to see the full extent of her malice. Now I documented it all. When she spread rumors that Jennifer Park had an eating disorder, Jennifer was competing with her for valedictorian, I recorded the conversation. When she stole the answers to the AP chemistry exam from Mr. Rodriguez's desk and shared them with her friends, I took photos of the evidence. When she bullied freshman Emma Luce so severely that Emma started skipping school, I collected every text message, every social media post, every witness statement. I wasn't ready to use any of it yet, but I was building a case. At home, I became the model daughter. I anticipated my parents' needs, kept my room spotless, maintained perfect grades, and never caused trouble. I was pleasant to Veronica, helpful but not doormatish. I was becoming invisible in a new way. Not the invisible of worthlessness, but the invisible of someone who blends into the background while planning a coup. My parents barely noticed the change. They were too focused on Veronica's drama, her breakup with Marcus, her college applications, her starring role in the school play. I let them focus on her. It made my preparations easier. The only person who noticed was my grandmother Chen, my father's mother. She was 83, sharp as a blade, and lived in a penthouse apartment downtown. In my previous life, she died when I was 20, leaving her entire estate to my father, with the stipulation that it be divided equally between Veronica and me. It hadn't been divided equally. My parents had given most of it to Veronica, claiming I was more financially stable. I'd been a struggling law student while Veronica had been unemployed and living off her married boyfriend. I'd gotten $50,000. Veronica had gotten almost $2 million. This time, I visited grandmother every Sunday. I brought her favorite tea, played mahjong with her, listened to her stories. She'd been cold to me in my first life. I'd thought she didn't like me. Now I realized she'd been disappointed. I'd been weak, and Grandmother Chen despised weakness. "You're different," she said one Sunday afternoon, studying me over her teacup. We were sitting in her living room, which overlooked the city skyline. "What happened?" I met her eyes. She was the only person in the world who might understand. "I learned that forgiveness isn't always a virtue," I said carefully. "Sometimes it's just permission for people to hurt you again." Grandmother was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, not the polite grimace she usually gave. "Your grandfather used to say that," she said. "He built this family's fortune from nothing, you know. People tried to cheat him, steal from him, destroy him. He forgave them once. Only once. After that, he destroyed them instead." She paused. "You have his eyes. I see that now. I see him in you." "What about father?" I asked. "Your father is a good man who married a social climber and learned to keep the peace at any cost." Her voice was crisp, matter of fact. "Your mother wanted a dynasty, not a family. She picked her favorite child and sacrificed the other. It's a tale as old as time." "And Veronica?" "Your sister is a cuckoo bird, pushing its sibling out of the nest to claim all the food for itself." Grandmother set down her teacup. "The question is, will you let her push you, or will you push back?" "I'll push back," I said quietly. "Good." She stood, walking to her desk. She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. "This is my attorney. When you're ready to fight, call him. He'll know you're coming. I'll make sure of it." I looked at the card. Harrison Webb, Senior Partner, Webb and Associates. I remembered him from my previous life. Grandmother's executor, sharp and ruthless. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because I'm old and dying and I'd like to see one Chen woman have a spine before I go." She sat back down, her expression softening slightly. "And because you're my granddaughter, whether your parents remember that or not." I don't abandon family, even when they abandon themselves. That conversation changed everything. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an ally, and she had the resources and connections I needed. The war was about to begin in earnest. The Ashford Charity Gala incident with the pink dress was just the appetizer. The real confrontation came 3 days later at our parents' anniversary party. Veronica had been seething since the gala. She'd been publicly embarrassed in front of everyone who mattered in our social circle. Photos of her in that red dress had circulated on social media with captions like, "Fashion fail," and "Did she miss the memo?" She'd tried to laugh it off, claiming she was making a statement, but everyone knew the truth. She'd been played. She just didn't know by whom. I'd been so sweet and sympathetic, lending her my shawl to cover the dress, agreeing that the theme announcement had been terribly short notice. I'd played the supportive sister perfectly while photographers captured my gracious assistance. Now it was Saturday night, and our parents were celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary with an intimate party of 200 people at our home. The theme was elegant garden party, white tents on the lawn, string lights in the trees, a jazz band playing under the stars. I wore a simple white sundress with pink embroidery, my hair in loose waves. Veronica wore another red dress, but this time it actually suited the occasion. She'd learned her lesson about checking the dress code. Her makeup was flawless, her hair perfect, her smile dazzling. She'd also spent the past 3 days planning revenge against whoever had sabotaged her at the gala. She suspected several of her friends, but hadn't settled on a target. I'd made sure to point suspicion toward her main rival, Christine Wang, by casually mentioning that Christine had known about the theme change days in advance. "Lily!" My mother appeared at my elbow, champagne glass in hand. "Go help your sister with the photo display. She's setting up pictures of our family in the library." I found Veronica in the library, arranging framed photographs on a large corkboard. Our family's history, baby pictures, vacation photos, school events, holidays. A visual narrative of the perfect family. Except it wasn't perfect. In photo after photo, a pattern emerged, Veronica front and center, smiling and radiant, while I was on the edge of the frame, overlooked or out of focus. Christmas morning, Veronica holding her expensive gifts, me with a book in the background. Family vacation, Veronica on the beach, me partially cropped out. School play, Veronica in costume on stage, me barely visible in the ensemble. 20 years of visual evidence that I didn't matter. "Don't you think it's a beautiful collection?" Veronica asked, not looking at me. She was adjusting a photo of her high school graduation, front and center, of course, while I was a blur in the background. "It's very honest," I said. She turned, her red lips curving into a smile. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just that it accurately represents our family dynamic." I picked up a photo from the table, one she hadn't hung yet. It showed the two of us as children, maybe 6 and 9. We were holding hands, both smiling, before the full weight of favoritism had driven its wedge between us. "You were going to leave this one out?" "It doesn't fit the aesthetic," she said dismissively. "Of course it doesn't. It shows us as equals." I set it down. "You can't have that, can you? You need everyone to see that you're the special one, the favorite, the chosen daughter." Her eyes narrowed. "What's wrong with you lately? You've been acting weird ever since the gala. Are you jealous because I got to go and you weren't even invited at first?" I had been invited. She'd intercepted my invitation and RSVP'd a decline on my behalf, then acted surprised when I'd shown up anyway. In my first life, that tactic had worked. I'd stayed home. This time, I'd called the organizers directly and confirmed my attendance. "Not jealous?" I said calmly. "Just tired of being edited out of my own family." "Oh, please," Veronica rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic. Mom and Dad love you. Just because they don't obsess over you every second doesn't mean you're edited out. Maybe if you were more interesting or accomplished, you'd get more attention." There it was, the same casual cruelty she'd always wielded, dismissing my feelings as oversensitivity while asserting that I deserved to be overlooked. In my first life, these words had cut deep. I'd believed them. I'd tried harder to be interesting, accomplished, worthy of attention. I'd worked myself to exhaustion trying to earn what she received effortlessly. Now I just smiled. "You're right," I said. "I should be more accomplished. I've been thinking about that a lot lately." She blinked, thrown off by my agreement. "Oh, well, good. Maybe start by applying to law school," I continued. "Stanford specifically. Their early admission program has a deadline next month." Veronica's face went pale. Stanford Law was her dream school. She'd been planning to apply since freshman year. She'd crafted her entire high school career around getting admitted. Mock trial, debate team, student government, summer internships at law firms. I'd done none of that. In my first life, I'd never even considered law school until after college. After Veronica had already gotten in and dropped out when she'd realized how much work it actually required. "You can't apply to Stanford Law," she said flatly. "Why not?" Because it's my school. I've been planning this for years. You've never even mentioned wanting to be a lawyer." "I'm mentioning it now." I picked up another photo, this one of Veronica receiving a debate trophy. "Besides, you're right that I should be more accomplished. What better way than getting into Stanford Law?" Her hands were shaking. "You won't get in. Your LSAT practice scores are mediocre. Your extracurriculars are boring. Your application essay will be generic." "You've been looking at my practice tests?" I asked mildly. She froze. No, I just assumed." "You've been going through my room." It wasn't a question. I'd known she did this. She'd done it in my first life too, constantly monitoring me, checking to see if I was becoming a threat. "It's fine. I don't have anything to hide." That was a lie. Everything important was encrypted on my laptop or stored in a safety deposit box at a bank Veronica didn't know about. What I'd left for her to find was carefully curated. Average practice test scores, decent but uninspiring essay drafts, a list of mediocre extracurricular activities. None of it was real. My actual LSAT practice scores were perfect. My actual essay was brilliant. I'd written it in my previous life, polished it through years of legal writing, and now I'd recreated it from memory. My actual application would showcase not just my high school activities, but a carefully constructed narrative of resilience and purpose. I was going to get into Stanford Law, and Veronica was going to watch it happen. "Stay out of my room," Veronica hissed, then caught herself. "I mean, I wasn't in your room. But if I was, it would only be because Mom asked me to grab something for you." "Of course," I said sweetly. That must be it." I left her in the library, hands still shaking with rage, and returned to the party. My father was giving a speech about love and commitment, about how lucky he was to have such a wonderful family. My mother stood beside him, beaming. Veronica joined them, slipping into place at my mother's side like she belonged there. I stood with the guests, clapping politely, feeling nothing. The Stanford Law application was just one front in the war. The real battle was for the family company. Chen Technologies had been founded by my grandfather and expanded by my father. It specialized in data security software for corporations, not sexy, but profitable. By the time of my death in my previous life, the company had been worth $50 million. In my past life, Veronica had joined the company's board at 23 after taking credit for my work exposing the embezzler. She'd been completely unqualified. She'd dropped out of Stanford Law after one semester and spent the next 2 years partying and living off her trust fund. But my father had been so proud of her initiative in uncovering the embezzlement that he'd given her a position anyway. She'd been a disaster. She'd known nothing about tech, nothing about business, nothing about corporate governance. But she'd been good at one thing: manipulation. She'd slowly poisoned my father against his most competent executives, replacing them with her friends and sycophants. By the time I died, Chen Technologies had been hemorrhaging money, losing contracts, circling the drain. I'd tried to help. I'd done consulting work for free, analyzing their legal vulnerabilities, advising on compliance issues. Veronica had blocked me at every turn, claiming I was trying to undermine her authority. This time, I was going to save the company by destroying Veronica's chance to join it. The embezzlement was still happening. I remembered when it had started in my junior year of high school. The business partner, Martin Cross, had been stealing small amounts at first, careful and clever. It would take him 3 years to get bold enough to leave obvious evidence, which would be when Veronica had discovered it in my first life. But I could discover it now. I started by befriending Martin's assistant, Casey Thompson. She was young, fresh out of college, smart, but naive. In my first life, I'd never paid attention to her. This time, I made her my project. I ran into her at a coffee shop near the Chen Technologies office, seemingly by accident. I was friendly, sympathetic, interested in her life. We started meeting for coffee regularly. I learned that she was drowning in student debt, that her job barely paid enough to cover rent, that Martin was a terrible boss who took credit for her work and yelled at her for his mistakes. "I don't know how much longer I can take it," she confided one afternoon, stirring her latte miserably. "I'm looking for other jobs, but nothing's panning out." "What does he have you working on?" I asked casually. "Just administrative stuff mostly. Filing, scheduling, expense reports." She hesitated. "Although some of the expense reports have been weird lately." I leaned forward. "Weird how?" "Like duplicate charges. Or expenses that don't match the receipts." I mentioned it to Martin, and he told me to mind my own business and just submit them. She looked uncomfortable. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this. Your dad is Martin's partner." "My dad would want to know if something was wrong," I said gently. "Do you have copies of these reports?" She bit her lip. "I save everything to the cloud, just to cover myself in case something goes wrong." "That's smart," I said. "Really smart." 2 weeks later, Casey sent me her resignation letter to review before she submitted it. We become close enough that she trusted my judgment. Hidden in the email thread was access to her cloud storage. I didn't tell her I'd found it. I just spent the next week analyzing every document she'd saved. And there it was, Martin's embezzlement scheme in meticulous detail. Falsified expense reports, dummy vendor accounts, inflated consulting fees to companies that didn't exist. Over 3 years, he'd stolen almost $500,000. I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, cross-referenced with bank records I obtained through some creative hacking. Thank you, computer skills from my previous life. Then I printed it all out, put it in a folder, and waited. I waited until the quarterly board meeting. I knew Veronica was planning to attend. My father had mentioned he wanted her to observe, to start learning about the business. She'd been thrilled, seeing it as the first step toward her eventual position of power. The night before the meeting, I broke into Veronica's room while she was at a party. I'd seen her rehearsing her concerned daughter routine in the mirror, preparing innocent questions she could ask to make herself seem engaged and intelligent. She'd even prepared notes. I replaced her notes with my report. Same folder, same color, same position on her desk. She'd grab it in the morning without looking. I knew she would. She always did things last minute, always relied on her ability to improvise and charm. The board meeting was at 9 a.m. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I'd asked my father if I could observe for educational purposes. He'd seemed surprised but pleased, even though my mother had protested. "Why is Lily coming?" Veronica had demanded at breakfast. "I thought this was for me." "There's room for both of you," my father had said distractedly, checking his phone. Veronica had shot me a poisonous look, but she couldn't object without seeming petty. The boardroom was sleek and modern, all glass and chrome. 8 board members sat around the table. My father, Martin Cross, and 6 others, including 2 women and a man I'd personally recruited in my past life as legal counsel. My father sat at the head of the table. Veronica and I took seats along the wall, observers rather than participants. The meeting proceeded normally for the first hour. Financial reports, product updates, marketing strategies. Veronica looked bored, scrolling on her phone occasionally. I took notes, appearing diligent. Then my father said, "Before we adjourn, does anyone have additional business?" This was Veronica's cue. In the original timeline, this would have been when she'd presented evidence of Martin's embezzlement 3 years from now, taking credit for discovery work I'd done. But this wasn't the original timeline. Veronica stood. "Actually, Dad, I've been doing some research and I found something concerning." My father looked surprised. "What kind of research?" "Just looking through some company records. Being proactive." She smiled, opening her folder. "I think there might be an issue with—" She stopped. Her face went white as she looked at the documents in her folder. My comprehensive embezzlement report, not whatever notes she'd thought she'd grabbed. Martin Cross's face went even whiter. "Veronica," my father prompted. "What kind of issue?" She was frozen, staring at the pages. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what had happened. She looked at me and I gave her the same sweet, supportive smile I'd been giving her for months. I I'm not sure I should bring this up here, she stammered. Maybe we should discuss it privately. If it concerns the company, the board should hear it, one of the members said. Veronica looked trapped. She couldn't back down now without seeming incompetent, but she didn't understand the documents in front of her well enough to present them. She was an actress who'd lost her script. It's about financial discrepancies, she said finally, deciding to push forward. In the expense reports. Martin had composed himself. What kind of discrepancies? I oversee those reports personally. That's the problem, Veronica said, gaining confidence. She still didn't fully understand what she was holding, but she was good at faking it. You've been, there are duplicate charges and... She trailed off, realizing she was getting lost in details she didn't comprehend. I stood. May I? Everyone turned to look at me. My father frowned. Lily, this is a board meeting. I know, but I've been researching the same issue Veronica mentioned. I walked over and gently took the folder from my sister's hands. She was too shocked to resist. I gave her my findings last night to review. I think she's still processing the information. I turned to face the board, channeling every bit of prosecutor energy from my past life. Martin Cross has been embezzling from Chen Technologies for 3 years, I said calmly. The evidence is comprehensive and damning. Falsified expense reports, payments to dummy corporations, inflated consulting fees. The total amount stolen is $473,000. The room erupted. Martin was shouting denials. Board members were demanding to see evidence. My father looked stricken. I distributed copies of the report to each member, walking around the table with perfect composure. Page 3 shows the dummy vendor accounts, I said, and Page 7 contains the bank transfer records. Page 12 has testimony from Martin's assistant, Casey Thompson, who kept copies of all the falsified reports. Everything is documented and verified. This is insane, Martin shouted. Richard, you've known me for 15 years. This girl is lying. The documents aren't lying, I said. And we can verify everything with a forensic audit. In fact, I recommend we contact the FBI immediately. This is federal wire fraud. My father was reading through the report, his face growing darker with each page. Lily, where did you get this information? I've been interning with Casey Thompson, learning about corporate administration, I said smoothly. She showed me some irregularities and I started investigating. It took me 3 months to compile everything. Veronica found her voice. But that's my folder. I was going to present this. Everyone looked at her. She realized her mistake immediately. I mean, Lily gave me her research to present, she corrected quickly. We were working together, as sisters. Really? I tilted my head. Because I gave you that folder last night and you didn't open it until just now. You had no idea what was in it. That's not true. Then explain the contents. Walk us through the evidence. I stepped back, gesturing to the report. Please, you've been studying this all night, haven't you? She couldn't. She'd never looked at it. Everyone could see the truth on her face. My father stood slowly. Martin, you're suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you out. Richard, please. Out. I'd never heard my father scream like that. Martin left, flanked by security guards who'd been called. The board was in chaos, everyone talking at once. My father called for order, announcing that an emergency audit would begin immediately. Through it all, I remained calm, professional, competent. And Veronica stood against the wall, red-faced and humiliated, realizing that I'd beaten her at her own game. The fallout from the board meeting was spectacular. Martin was arrested within the week. The FBI moved fast when evidence was that clear. He ended up taking a plea deal, 5 years in prison, full restitution, and he flipped on 2 other executives at different companies who'd been helping him launder the money. My father was devastated by the betrayal from his business partner, but grateful that I'd uncovered it before more damage was done. He offered me an internship at Chen Technologies, a real position with real responsibilities. "You have a brilliant mind," he told me in his office, pride evident in his voice. Pride I'd never heard directed at me before. "I didn't realize how much you'd been paying attention to the business. This could have destroyed us." "I just want to help," I said sincerely. "You've done more than help. You've saved the company." He paused. "I'm sorry I didn't see your potential earlier. I think I've been distracted." We both knew by what, or rather, by whom. At home, the dynamic shifted subtly but unmistakably. My mother was still devoted to Veronica, but even she had to acknowledge my accomplishment. My father started consulting me on business decisions, asking my opinion, treating me like an equal. Grandmother was thrilled when I told her the news. "You've drawn blood," she said with satisfaction during our Sunday tea. "The prey is wounded. Now you finish the hunt." "It's not over yet," I agreed. Veronica's humiliation at the board meeting had been public and thorough. Everyone in our social circle heard about it, how she'd tried to take credit for her sister's work, how she'd been exposed in front of the entire board. Her reputation as the golden child was beginning to tarnish. But she was far from defeated. If anything, I'd made her dangerous. She started sabotaging me in earnest. Small things at first. She'd accidentally spill coffee on my homework, delete files from my laptop, not knowing I backed everything up to the cloud. Spread rumors at school that I was a teacher's pet and a snitch. When I got asked to prom by Tyler Matthews, one of the most popular seniors, she swooped in and seduced him, then sent me pictures of them kissing with a caption, "Oops, was this your date?" I didn't care about Tyler. I'd dated him briefly in my first life, and he'd been dull as dishwater. But I let Veronica think I was devastated. I cried publicly, played the heartbroken victim, let everyone see her cruelty. People started noticing. When you hurt someone over and over and they never fight back, observers get uncomfortable. They start questioning the aggressor instead of the victim. "Why is Veronica so mean to her sister?" I heard Jessica Chen whisper to her friend in the bathroom. "Lily's actually really nice." "I know, and after Lily saved their family company, you'd think Veronica would be grateful instead of jealous." The court of public opinion was shifting. In my favor. Slowly but surely. My real focus was the Stanford application. I'd submitted it in early November, just as I'd said I would. My LSAT score was perfect, 180, top of the curve. My essay was about overcoming family dynamics and finding my own voice, a subtle masterpiece that never directly blamed Veronica, but painted a clear picture of favoritism and resilience. My recommendations came from teachers who'd watched me transform from invisible to invaluable over the past months. Veronica submitted her application a week after mine. Her LSAT was good, but not great, 172. Her essay was about justice and fairness, ironically. Her recommendations were fine, but she'd been the golden child her whole life. She'd been told she was special, brilliant, destined for greatness. She believed she'd get in because she always got what she wanted. Acceptance letters came in March. Mine arrived first. I was in my room when the email notification popped up on my laptop. I opened it, already knowing what it would say because I'd lived this moment before. In my first life, Veronica had gotten in, and I'd received a rejection letter. This time, the roles were reversed. "Dear Ms. Chen, congratulations. On behalf of Stanford Law School, I am delighted to offer you admission." I sat there reading and rereading, feeling something I hadn't felt in my first life, vindication. Then I heard the scream from Veronica's room. I found her sobbing at her desk, her rejection letter on the screen. My mother was with her, arms around her, making soothing sounds. "I don't understand," Veronica wailed. "I was supposed to get in. I've been planning this since freshman year. I did everything right." "Maybe you can appeal," my mother said desperately, "or apply again next year." "Lily got in." Veronica looked at me with pure hatred. "Lily stole my spot." "That's not how admissions work," I said quietly. "You copied my essays. You sabotaged me. I earned it," I interrupted, my voice hard. "I studied harder, scored higher, and wrote better essays. This isn't about you. It's about me being good enough on my own merit." You're not good enough, Veronica shrieked. You're nothing. You're the backup child, the spare, the one they didn't really want. Stanford made a mistake. My mother gasped. Veronica, that's enough. But it wasn't enough. Veronica stood, knocking over her chair. You've been copying me your whole life. Wearing what I wear, liking what I like, wanting what I want. You're a parasite. Really? I said coldly. Because from where I stand, you're the one who's been copying me, taking my ideas, stealing my work, claiming my accomplishments. At least I got into Stanford on my own merit instead of riding someone else's coattails. She slapped me, hard. The crack echoed in the room. I touched my cheek, feeling the sting, and smiled. Thank you. For what? For showing everyone exactly who you are. I turned to leave and found my father, standing in the doorway. He'd seen everything, heard everything. Veronica, he said quietly, come with me. Now. She followed him downstairs, still crying. My mother hesitated, looking between me and the doorway, then hurried after them. I stood alone in Veronica's room, surrounded by her trophies and awards and photographs, all evidence of a perfect life that was beginning to crumble. I touched my cheek again where she'd hit me. In my first life, I would have been devastated by the slap, by her words, by the family conflict. I would have apologized somehow, tried to make peace, maybe even considered not going to Stanford to keep the peace. This Lily just felt satisfied. The war wasn't over. But I was winning. Summer arrived, and with it came the charity circuit. Endless galas, fundraisers, and society events where the wealthy displayed their philanthropy like peacock feathers. In my first life, I'd dreaded these events. I'd been awkward, uncomfortable, always in Veronica's shadow. This time, I was ready. The transformation had been gradual. I'd been working with a stylist grandmother had recommended, someone who understood that I didn't need to compete with Veronica's dramatic beauty. I needed to establish my own aesthetic. Where Veronica was crimson and gold and attention-grabbing, I became soft pinks, elegant silvers, understated grace. I stopped trying to outshine her and instead became luminous in a different way. The difference was remarkable. At the Westfield Foundation Gala in June, Veronica wore a red gown with a plunging neckline, dripping in rubies. She was stunning, as always. Every eye in the room turned to her when she entered. I wore a rose gold dress that hugged my figure perfectly, my hair in an elegant updo, with simple diamond earrings. I looked like money that didn't need to shout about itself. I looked like power that was confident enough to be quiet. And more importantly, I'd done my homework. I'd researched every major donor, every board member, every influential guest. I knew their business interests, their philanthropic passions, their family connections. When I spoke with them, I was knowledgeable and engaging. I asked intelligent questions. I made connections. You're Richard's younger daughter, Mrs. Ashford, the gala's host, said with surprise when we were introduced. I expected, well, someone different. Most people do, I said with a smile. My sister casts a long shadow. Not tonight, dear, she patted my hand. Tonight you're shining all on your own. Tell me, your father mentioned you're interested in corporate law. We're always looking for sharp young people at the Ashford Foundation. By the end of the evening, I had 3 job offers, 2 mentorship opportunities, and invitations to 4 exclusive events Veronica hadn't been invited to. My mother was confused. My father was proud. Veronica was furious. What are you doing? She hissed at me when we were alone in the bathroom. You're embarrassing yourself, trying to network like some social climber. Isn't that what these events are for? I asked innocently, reapplying my pink lipstick in the mirror. These events are for people who already matter to maintain their connections. You're nobody. Not anymore, I said simply. She grabbed at my wrist, her red nails digging into my skin. Stop whatever game you're playing. I don't know what's gotten into you, but it needs to stop. I looked at her reflection in the mirror. No. No. No, I'm not stopping. I'm not disappearing. I'm not making myself smaller so you can feel bigger. I pulled my wrist from her grip. I'm done being your shadow, Veronica. Get used to the light. I walked out, leaving her staring at her own reflection. And for the first time, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. She was beginning to realize that I wasn't just competing with her anymore. I was surpassing her. July brought the annual Chen family vacation to the Hamptons. 2 weeks of beach time, yacht parties, and social obligations. In my first life, these vacations had been torture. Veronica would spend the entire time flirting with wealthy boys, getting attention, being the belle of every party, while I stayed in the background, reading books and trying not to be noticed. This time was different. On the second night, there was a party at the Wentworth estate. I wore a pink sundress and my new diamond earrings, a gift from grandmother for getting into Stanford. Veronica wore red, as always, a bikini top and sarong that showed off her perfect figure. The party was on the beach, with bonfires and a live band and the kind of casual elegance that required immense wealth to pull off. Veronica immediately attracted a crowd of admirers. I went to talk to the hosts. "Mrs. Wentworth, thank you so much for including us," I said warmly. "Your home is beautiful." "Oh, you're Richard's daughter. Which one are you?" "Lily, the one in pink." She laughed. "Smart girl. Stand out by not trying to. I like that." She studied me more closely. "You're the one going to Stanford Law, aren't you? Richard hasn't stopped bragging about you." "He has?" That was news to me. "Oh, yes. Apparently you saved his company from some nasty embezzlement scheme. Very impressive for someone your age." We talked for another 20 minutes. She introduced me to her son, James Wentworth, who was starting his second year at Harvard Business. He was handsome, intelligent, and clearly interested. "Would you like to take a walk?" he asked after we'd been talking for a while. We walked along the beach, away from the party noise. He told me about his work, his plans to eventually take over his father's investment firm. I told him about my interest in corporate law, my plans for Stanford. "You're not like other girls I meet at these things," he said. "What are other girls like?" "Hungry. You can see them calculating, trying to figure out what you're worth, how you can benefit them." He smiled. "You're not doing that. You're just present." "Maybe I'm just a better actress," I teased. "Maybe, but I don't think so." When we returned to the party, Veronica was watching from across the beach, her face stormy. James Wentworth was one of the most eligible bachelors in our social circle, and she'd been trying to get his attention all night. Now he was with me. The next 2 weeks followed the same pattern. I wasn't trying to steal Veronica's thunder, but I wasn't hiding anymore either. I went to parties, made connections, got invited to exclusive events. Boys who'd never noticed me before suddenly found me interesting, not because I'd become more beautiful, but because I'd become more confident, more self-possessed. Veronica responded by becoming more aggressive, more attention-seeking, more desperate. She'd interrupt conversations I was having, drag me away from people I was talking to, make jokes at my expense. But it backfired. People started seeing her as insecure, petty, threatened by her own sister. "Your sister seems stressed," James commented one evening when Veronica had physically stepped between us during a conversation. "She's adjusting to some changes," I said diplomatically. "Changes like you coming into your own?" I met his eyes. "Something like that." By the end of the vacation, James had asked for my number. 3 other boys had done the same. I'd been invited to 2 more galas and a weekend retreat at Martha's Vineyard, and Veronica hadn't spoken to me in 4 days. August came too fast. I had 1 month before I left for Stanford, 1 month to ensure that my foundation was secure and Veronica couldn't sabotage what I'd built. The opportunity came from an unexpected source: my mother. "Lily, I need to talk to you," she said one morning over breakfast. Veronica had slept in, and my father had already left for work. It was just the 2 of us in the kitchen, a rare occurrence. "What's wrong?" I asked. She looked uncomfortable. "It's about Veronica. She's been struggling since the Stanford rejection. Her therapist thinks she might be depressed." Veronica was in therapy? That was new. In my first life, therapy had been my suggestion, something my parents dismissed as unnecessary. Now Veronica was the one who needed help. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. The therapist thinks part of the problem is sibling rivalry, that Veronica feels like she's competing with you and losing. My mother folded her hands. I know things have been tense between you two lately. Could you maybe tone down your success? Just for a while. Give her space to breathe. I stared at my mother, this woman who'd favored one daughter over another for 17 years, who'd stood by while Veronica had bullied and sabotaged me countless times. And now she was asking me to make myself small again, to dim my light so her golden child could shine. In my first life, I would have said yes. I would have agreed, apologized for outshining my sister, tried to fade back into the background where I belonged. This, Lily said, no. My mother blinked. No, I won't apologize for being successful. I won't hide my accomplishments to protect Veronica's feelings. And I won't shrink myself to fit into the box this family has built for me. I stood up. If Veronica is depressed, that's terrible, and I hope therapy helps. But her mental health isn't my responsibility, especially when she spent years tearing me down without anyone asking her to stop. Lily, you're being selfish. I'm being healthy, I corrected. There's a difference. I left the kitchen before she could respond, but I wasn't angry. I was something else entirely, free. That conversation with my mother crystallized something I'd been feeling for months. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't just about beating Veronica at her own game. It was about reclaiming myself, becoming the person I should have been the first time around. That afternoon, I called Harrison Webb, grandmother's attorney. Miss Chen, he said warmly, your grandmother said you'd be calling soon. How can I help? I need to set up a trust fund, I said, and I need it to be completely independent from my family's money. Can you help me with that? Absolutely. Come by my office tomorrow and we'll discuss the details. The next day, I established the Lily Chen Trust. I transferred all my investment earnings, now worth almost $400,000, into a protected account that only I could access. I set up automatic transfers to continue growing the fund, and I established legal protections to ensure that no one, not even my parents, could touch that money without my explicit permission. You're unusually savvy for 18, Harrison commented as we finalized the paperwork. I've learned from experience, I said. Difficult experience, I'd imagine. He signed the last document and looked at me seriously. Your grandmother loves you very much. She's worried about what happens to you after she's gone. Is she sick? My heart clenched. She's 83 and realistic about mortality. He paused. She's updating her will. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details, but I will say this. She wants to ensure you're taken care of, that you have the resources to build a life independent of your parents' choices. I understood what he wasn't saying. Grandmother was going to leave me her estate, or at least a significant portion of it. She was giving me the tools to survive whatever came next. Thank you, I said quietly. Thank me by living well, he replied, by being happy and successful in everything she knows you can be. That's all she wants. The last 2 weeks of August were chaotic. I packed for Stanford, finalized my dorm arrangements, and said goodbye to friends. James took me to dinner twice, and we agreed to stay in touch. I liked him, and I thought maybe we could build something genuine. Tyler Matthews tried to apologize for the prom incident, and I accepted graciously but declined his offer to stay friends. Veronica and I barely interacted. She spent most of her time in her room or out with friends, avoiding me. When we did cross paths, she looked through me like I was invisible. Fine, let her pretend I didn't exist. In a few weeks, I'd be gone, and she'd have to face the consequences of her actions without me as a convenient scapegoat. 2 days before I left, Grandmother invited me to dinner at her penthouse. Just the two of us, she said. A proper goodbye. I dressed carefully in a pink silk dress and arrived promptly at 7. She greeted me with a hug, warm and real, so different from the cold formality I remembered from my first life. You look beautiful, she said. Not trying too hard, just being yourself. I'm proud of you. We had dinner on her terrace overlooking the city. The food was excellent, the conversation better. She told me stories about my grandfather, about building their fortune from nothing, about the people who'd tried to tear them down and how they'd survived. Your grandfather had a saying, she told me as dessert was served. Success is the best revenge, but strategic success is even better. What's strategic success? It's when you don't just win, you win in a way that makes your enemies regret ever underestimating you. She smiled. You're doing that, Lily. You're not just succeeding. You're doing it in a way that exposes everyone who dismissed you, your sister, your mother, everyone who thought you were less than. Sometimes I feel guilty, I admitted, like I'm being cruel. Are you doing anything dishonest? No. Are you hurting anyone who didn't hurt you first? No. Then you're not being cruel. You're being honest. She reached across the table and took my hand. Justice and revenge are often the same thing, Lily. Don't let anyone shame you for wanting both. After dinner, she walked me to her study. There was a large envelope on the desk. This is for you, she said, handing it to me. Don't open it until you're at Stanford. It's information about your trust fund and some other resources I've set up. Harrison has all the details. Grandmother, I'm not dying tomorrow, she said with a laugh. But I am old and I'm practical. I want you to have everything you need to build your life exactly as you want it. No compromises, no depending on people who've proven they can't be trusted. I hugged her tightly. Thank you for everything, for believing in me when no one else did. I always believed in you, she said softly. You just had to believe in yourself. My parents drove me to the airport. Veronica claimed she had plans and couldn't come, fine by me. The drive was quiet, my mother making small talk about remembering to call, my father offering advice about studying hard and making connections at the departure gate. My father hugged me. I'm proud of you, Lily. I should have said that more often. Thanks, Dad. My mother's hug was stiffer. Be safe. And Lily, please think about what I said. About Veronica. She's family. So am I said quietly, then picked up my bags and walked toward security without looking back. The flight to California was smooth. I sat in my window seat, watching the clouds, thinking about everything that had happened over the past 8 months. I'd taken the second chance I'd been given and used it to reclaim my life piece by piece. I'd protected myself, built resources, established my own identity separate from Veronica's shadow. But I hadn't destroyed her, not yet. That would come later, when the stakes were higher and the consequences more severe. For now, I was content to be free. Stanford was everything I'd hoped. My dorm room was small, but mine. My roommate, Jennifer, was a pre-med student from Seattle, driven and friendly. My classes were challenging in the best way. And for the first time in my life, both lives, I felt like I belonged. I dove into my studies with the intensity of someone who knew exactly why she was there. I joined study groups, networked with professors, attended every guest lecture and law society meeting. I wasn't just preparing for law school, I was building the foundation for the career I'd had before, but better this time. Smarter, more strategic. James called once a week. We video chatted about our respective schools, our classes, our plans. He was sweet and genuine, and I found myself looking forward to his calls. Maybe this could be something real. Veronica called once in September. I was in the library when my phone buzzed. What do you want? I answered. Is that any way to greet your sister? Her voice was sharp. It's the way I greet someone who made my life hell for 17 years. What do you want, Veronica? There was a long pause, then, Mom says I should apologize. Does Mom also script your apologies, or are you capable of forming your own thoughts? Fuck you. The line went dead. I went back to studying, unbothered. Grandmother called every Sunday. We talked about my classes, my life, my plans. She told me about the family. My father was doing well with the company, now that Martin's embezzlement scheme had been completely unwound and the stolen money recovered. My mother was busy with her charity work. Veronica had enrolled in community college and was finding herself. She's floundering, Grandmother said bluntly. Without you there to sabotage, she doesn't know who she is. That's not my problem, I said. No, it's not. But it will become your problem if you're not careful. Her voice was serious. Wounded animals are dangerous, Lily. Your sister is wounded and she's going to lash out. Be ready. I took her advice seriously. I increased my digital security, changed all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication on everything. I backed up all my important documents to multiple cloud services. I was careful about what I posted on social media and who I let into my life, but I couldn't prepare for what came next. In November, just before Thanksgiving break, I got a call from Harrison Webb. Miss Chen, I have difficult news, he said without preamble. Your grandmother had a stroke 3 days ago. She's at Mercy General Hospital. My world tilted. Is she? She's alive, but it's serious. You should come home as soon as possible. I booked the next flight out. I was on a plane within 4 hours, my heart racing, my mind numb. Not grandmother, not yet. I wasn't ready. The hospital room was quiet except for the beeping of monitors. Grandmother looked small in the bed, diminished in a way I'd never seen. Her right side was paralyzed from the stroke, her speech slurred, but her eyes were sharp when she saw me. Lily, she managed. Good, you came. Of course I came. I took her left hand, the one that still worked, and held it gently. I'm here. Listen, she said slowly, fighting to form words. Will. Changed. Everything to you. Don't talk about that now. You're going to be fine. Not fine, dying. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Everything goes to you. Not your father, not your sister. You. I felt tears streaming down my face. Grandmother, deserve it, earned it, use it wisely. I will, I promise. She smiled, that fierce smile I loved. Then her eyes drifted closed, and she slept. I stayed with her for 3 days, barely leaving her side. My father came and went, looking shell-shocked. My mother visited once, cried performatively, and left. Veronica didn't come at all. On the 3rd day, grandmother woke briefly. She looked at me and said, clearly this time, I'm proud of you. Then her eyes closed, and she didn't wake again. She died that night, peacefully, with me holding her hand. The funeral was massive. Grandmother had been a titan in the business community, a philanthropist, a force of nature. Hundreds of people came to pay respects. I stood in my black dress, simple, elegant, expensive, and accepted condolences with grace and composure. Veronica showed up late, dressed inappropriately in a tight black dress, better suited for a nightclub than a funeral. She cried dramatically during the service, making a scene, drawing attention to herself, even at grandmother's funeral. I felt nothing watching her performance. Just a cold assessment. She hadn't visited grandmother in the hospital. She hadn't been there when it mattered. And now she was crying for an audience. The reading of the will happened 3 days later at Harrison Webb's office. My parents were there, along with Veronica and me, plus various cousins and relatives I barely knew. Harrison read through the preliminaries, small bequests to charity, sentimental items for various family members. Then he got to the main estate. The remainder of my estate, including all financial assets, real property, and business holdings, I leave entirely to my granddaughter, Lily Chen. The room erupted. That can't be right, my mother shrieked. She wouldn't cut out her own son. My mother loved Lily best, my father said, looking stunned. But I thought, this is bullshit. Veronica jumped to her feet. Lily must have manipulated her. She poisoned grandmother against us. Harrison waited for the noise to die down. Mrs. Chen was of sound mind when she made this will. I have multiple psychiatric evaluations confirming her competence. Her decision was deliberate and informed. How much? My mother demanded. How much did she leave? The total estate is valued at approximately $47 million. Silence. Complete, utter silence. I sat very still, absorbing the number. 47 million. Grandmother had been wealthier than I'd realized, and she'd left every penny to me. That money belongs to the family, my mother said. Richard, say something. My father was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Lily, did you know about this? She told me she'd changed her will, I said quietly, but I didn't know the amount. You manipulated her, Veronica hissed. You spent all that time visiting her, playing the perfect granddaughter, and you poisoned her against us. I visited her because I loved her, I said. Where were you, Veronica? When did you last see grandmother? Before she died, I mean, not when you could make a scene at her funeral? She flinched. Mrs. Chen left letters explaining her reasoning, Harrison said, pulling out envelopes. One for each of you. He distributed them. I opened mine with shaking hands. My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer to watch you bloom, but I'm proud of the woman you've become. I'm leaving you everything because you're the only one who earned it. Not through manipulation or fakery, but through a genuine character and effort. You remind me of your grandfather, strategic, resilient, and kind to those who deserve kindness. Your father is a good man, but a weak one. Your mother is a social climber who values status over substance. And your sister, well, you know what your sister is. I debated splitting the inheritance, but that would have been fair, not just. Fairness is giving everyone the same thing. Justice is giving people what they've earned. You earned this, Lily. The others didn't. Use this money wisely. Build the life you want. And remember, you don't owe anyone access to the resources you've accumulated, especially family who treated you as an afterthought. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see you. Forever your grandmother, Eleanor Chen. I folded the letter carefully, my vision blurring with tears. Around me, my family was reading their own letters. Shorter, I suspected, and far less kind. My mother was crying angry tears. My father looked devastated. Veronica was pale with rage. This isn't over, Veronica said, standing abruptly. I'm contesting this will. We'll prove she was manipulated. You're welcome to try, Harrison said calmly. Satsis. But I should warn you, Mrs. Chen anticipated this response. She had multiple lawyers, doctors, and witnesses document her mental competence. She was thorough. Of course she was, Veronica spat. She learned from the best manipulator. She looked at me with pure hatred. You think you've won, but you haven't. This family will tear you apart for stealing our inheritance. It wasn't your inheritance, I said quietly. It was hers to give. And she gave it to me. Veronica stormed out, my mother following. My father stayed, looking lost. Lily, he said finally. I don't understand. When did you and your grandmother become so close? When I started visiting her every Sunday. When I showed interest in her life, her history, her wisdom. I met his eyes. When I treated her like a person instead of an ATM. He flinched. Is that what you think I did? I think you took her for granted, like you took me for granted. I stood, gathering my things. I'm going back to Stanford tomorrow. Harrison has my contact information if you need anything related to the estate. Lily, wait. He caught my arm. I know I've made mistakes. With you, with Veronica, with the family balance. I let your mother influence me too much. I favored Veronica because she was easier, more like your mother. And you were always so independent, so self-sufficient. I thought you didn't need me. I did need you, I said softly. I needed you to see me, to value me, to protect me from my sister's cruelty instead of enabling it. I'm sorry. His voice broke. I'm so sorry, Lily. Can we fix this? I looked at my father, this man who'd loved me but not enough, who'd hurt me through negligence rather than malice. In my first life, I'd have forgiven him immediately, desperate for any scrap of parental affection. This time, I said, maybe, eventually, but not today. I need time. I left him standing in Harrison's office and walked out into the cold November air, $47 million richer and completely, utterly alone. Except I wasn't alone. I had grandmother's gift. I had my education. I had James, who'd called every day since grandmother died. I had my own strength, hard-won and unshakable. I had everything I needed to finish what I'd started. Thanksgiving break was tense. I stayed with James's family in Boston instead of going home. His mother was warm and welcoming, and his father treated me like I was already part of the family. It was nice being somewhere people were genuinely kind without calculation. James kissed me on Thanksgiving night, soft and sweet under the stars in his parents' garden. "I know it's fast," he said, "but I think I'm falling for you." "I think I might be falling too," I admitted. It was true. After years of guarding my heart, of knowing that people would hurt me, I was letting someone in. It was terrifying and wonderful. I went back to Stanford for finals with renewed purpose. I aced every exam, finished the semester with a 4.0, and spent the break planning my next moves. Veronica did contest the will, as she'd threatened. She hired a lawyer, paid for by my parents, and filed motions claiming undue influence and mental incompetence. Harrison handled it easily, producing mountains of documentation proving grandmother's sound mind and independent decision-making. The case was dismissed in February. Veronica had to pay court costs. My mother called after the dismissal, her voice tight with rage. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family." "I didn't destroy anything," I said calmly. "I just stopped pretending we were something we weren't." "You've turned your father against me. He blames me for how we treated you." "Maybe he should." "You ungrateful little—" She caught herself. "We raised you, fed you, clothed you, gave you everything. You gave me life and a house to live in." "That's not everything, Mom. That's the minimum." I paused. "And you didn't give me everything. You gave Veronica everything. I just existed in the margins." "That's not true." "It is true. You know it is. Grandmother knew it. Dad's starting to realize it. The only people still lying are you and Veronica." She hung up on me. I sat in my dorm room, looking out at the Stanford campus, feeling lighter than I had in years. Every conversation like this was another severed rope, another weight dropping away. I was free. Truly. Completely free. Junior year flew by. I maintained my perfect GPA, got a prestigious internship at a Silicon Valley law firm, and deepened my relationship with James. We spent spring break in Paris, his graduation gift to me, and it was magical. He told me he loved me at the top of the Eiffel Tower, and I said it back, meaning it with all my heart. My father and I started slowly rebuilding our relationship through monthly phone calls. He'd been going to therapy, working through his guilt about the family dynamics. He'd separated from my mother, not divorced yet, but living apart, trying to figure out who he was without her influence. "She's moving into an apartment with Veronica," he told me in one call. "They're getting a place together. I think they need each other right now." "How's Veronica doing?" I asked, not because I cared, but because it was the polite thing to ask. "Struggling. She dropped out of community college. She's been through 3 jobs in 6 months. Your mother's worried about her." He paused. "I'm worried too. She's angry all the time, bitter. She blames you for everything." "Of course she does." "I'm not defending her," he said quickly. I'm just concerned. She needs help, Lily." "Then help her, Dad. But don't ask me to fix her. That's not my job." He sighed. "You're right. I just wish things were different." They could have been. You had 18 years to make them different. The truth was settling between us like sediment, clear and undeniable. He'd failed me. He knew it. I knew it. And we were both learning to live with that knowledge. Senior year arrived, and with it came law school applications. I applied to all the top schools: Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Stanford Law. My LSAT was perfect, my GPA immaculate, my recommendations glowing. I had everything going for me, plus $47 million in the bank. I got into all of them. I chose Harvard. Not because it was better than Stanford necessarily, but because James was in Boston and I wanted to build my life closer to his. We'd been dating for 2 years and it felt right. Veronica, meanwhile, had gotten engaged to a 45-year-old divorcee named Frank Morrison. He owned a chain of car dealerships, successful but uncouth, rich but crude. My mother was thrilled. It was the first good news from Veronica in years. The engagement party was in June, a gaudy affair at a hotel ballroom with too many flowers and too much champagne. I went because my father asked me to, because we were trying to rebuild our relationship, and because I was curious to see what Veronica had become. She was still beautiful, but harder now. Her red dress was tight and expensive, her makeup heavier, her laugh too loud. She clung to Frank's arm possessively while he told crude jokes to his friends. Lily! She spotted me across the room and came over, champagne in hand. You actually came. I thought you'd be too busy counting your money. Congratulations on your engagement, I said politely. Thanks. Frank's wonderful, very successful. He has 7 dealerships, you know. That's impressive. And he's generous. He bought me this ring. She flashed her left hand, a huge diamond, ostentatious and gaudy. 3 carats. What do you think? It's very sparkly. Her smile was sharp. I heard you got into Harvard Law, following in my footsteps as usual. Actually, you never got into Harvard. You got into Stanford and dropped out. Details. She waved dismissively. The point is, I paved the way. You're just copying me. I could have pointed out the absurdity. She hadn't paved anything. I'd succeeded despite her sabotage, not because of any path she'd cleared. But what was the point? She needed this narrative to cope with her failures. If that's what you need to believe, I said simply. What's that supposed to mean? It means congratulations again on your engagement. I hope you'll be very happy. I walked away before she could respond, finding my father near the bar. That was diplomatic, he observed. I'm trying to be the bigger person. You've succeeded. He squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Lily. Not just for your success, but for your character. You've handled all this with remarkable grace. Most of the time, I admitted. Sometimes I want to scream at her. Tell her exactly what I think. But you don't. No, because it wouldn't change anything. She is who she is. And she was. Veronica was a cautionary tale, beautiful, privileged, given every advantage, and still ending up bitter and diminished because she'd never developed substance beyond her surface. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Harvard Law was everything I'd hoped. Challenging, intense, intellectually stimulating. I thrived in the competitive environment, made friends with other ambitious students, and started planning my career in earnest. James proposed during my first year, a perfect proposal on a snowy February evening in the Boston Public Garden. I said yes without hesitation. We were good together, partners in every sense, supporting each other's ambitions, genuinely enjoying each other's company. My father was thrilled about the engagement. My mother sent a passive-aggressive text. I hope you'll be happier in your marriage than I was in mine. Veronica didn't respond at all to the announcement. Her own marriage to Frank was apparently rocky. According to my father, Frank had a temper and a drinking problem. Veronica had quit working after the wedding and spent her days shopping and posting on social media, trying to maintain the image of a happy newlywed while her marriage crumbled. I didn't gloat. I just focused on my own life, my own happiness, my own future. Second year of law school brought an unexpected development. My mother called, sounding desperate. Lily, I need your help. With what? Veronica's in trouble. Real trouble. Frank, she stopped, her voice breaking. He hit her badly. She's in the hospital. My blood ran cold. Is she okay? She has a concussion and 2 broken ribs. She's filing for divorce, but Frank's threatening her. He's saying he'll destroy her in court, take everything, ruin her reputation. My mother was crying now. She needs a lawyer, Lily, a good one. She can't afford. I'll take care of it, I heard myself say. Really? My mother sounded shocked. Really, give me the hospital information. I'll be there tomorrow. I flew to New York the next morning, my mind racing. I hated Veronica. She'd tormented me for years, stolen from me, sabotaged me, tried to destroy everything I built. She deserved nothing from me. But she didn't deserve to be beaten. She didn't deserve to be terrorized by an abusive husband. And despite everything, she was still my sister. I found her in a private hospital room, her face bruised, her arm in a sling. My mother sat beside the bed, looking haggard. Lily, Veronica said when she saw me, her voice hoarse. You came. I came. I pulled up a chair. Tell me everything, from the beginning. She told me. Frank's drinking had gotten worse after the wedding. He'd become controlling, checking her phone, isolating her from friends, accusing her of cheating. When she'd finally decided to leave, he'd beaten her severely, telling her she'd never escape, that he'd destroy her if she tried. I have photos, she said quietly, of the bruises, all of them, over the past year. You've been documenting? I'm not stupid, Lily. I knew I might need evidence someday. I felt a flicker of respect. Maybe Veronica had learned something after all. I spent the next week building her divorce case. I hired the best family law attorney in New York, compiled all the evidence, got a restraining order against Frank, and helped Veronica file for an emergency divorce on grounds of abuse. Frank tried to fight it. He hired expensive lawyers, made threats, tried to intimidate Veronica into dropping the charges. But I'd learned a lot in law school, and I had resources he couldn't match. Within 3 months, Veronica had her divorce, a decent settlement, and Frank had a criminal record for domestic violence. Thank you, Veronica said when it was all over. We were having coffee at a cafe near her new apartment, a place I'd helped her find and furnish. I know I don't deserve your help. No, I agreed. You don't. She flinched. But I didn't help you because you deserve it, I continued. I helped you because no woman deserves to be abused, not even you. I've been terrible to you, she said, staring into her coffee. For years, all our lives, really. I was jealous and cruel, and she looked up, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Lily. I'm genuinely, truly sorry. I studied her, looking for the lie, the manipulation, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine remorse. I appreciate the apology, I said carefully. But I need you to understand. Sorry doesn't fix what you broke. It doesn't undo the damage. It's just... sorry. I know. I don't trust you. I probably never will. What you did to me, all of it, it was systematic and cruel. You weren't just a mean sister. You were deliberately destructive. I know, she said again, wiping her eyes. I was competing with you for Mom's attention, for Dad's approval. I thought if I made you small, I'd be bigger. And how did that work out? She laughed bitterly. I ended up married to an abuser, broke, friendless, and miserable. You ended up at Harvard Law, engaged to James Wentworth, inheriting millions. So, not great for me. I didn't do all that to spite you, I said. I did it to survive you. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Veronica said, Can we start over? Not be close or best friends, but maybe not enemies? I thought about it, about the girl she'd been, the woman she'd become, the years of pain between us. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today. Today, I'm just glad you're safe. That's more than I deserve, she said. Yes, I agreed, it is. I graduated from Harvard Law at the top of my class. My father came to the ceremony, beaming with pride. My mother came too, sitting far from my father, but clapping when I received my diploma. James was there with his family, and to my surprise, Veronica came, sitting in the back, quiet and unobtrusive. After the ceremony, she came up to me briefly. Congratulations, she said. You earned this. Thank you. I'm proud of you. I know I don't have the right to be, but I am. I looked at my sister, this woman who'd tormented me, this stranger I'd known my whole life, and I felt something unexpected: pity. She'd had every advantage and squandered it. She'd been given love and attention and opportunity, and she'd turned it all into bitterness and failure. While I, the overlooked daughter, the underestimated sister, had built something real and lasting. Take care of yourself, Veronica, I said, not unkindly. You too, Lily. She walked away and I watched her go, feeling the weight of our shared history lifting. James appeared at my elbow. Ready to celebrate, counselor? More than ready. 5 years later, I'm sitting in my office at Chen Legal Consultants, the firm I founded after a few years at a corporate firm. It's small but growing, specializing in corporate litigation and women's advocacy work. I have 12 employees, 3 major corporate clients, and a reputation for being brilliant and ruthless. My office walls are decorated with my accomplishments: Harvard Law diploma, various awards, a photo of me and James on our wedding day. We've been married for 3 years now, happy and stable, talking about starting a family. My father and I have lunch once a month. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's honest. He's retired from Chen Technologies and spends his time golfing and traveling. He's dating someone new, a kind woman named Patricia who treats him better than my mother ever did. My mother lives in Florida with my aunt. We exchange Christmas cards, nothing more. And Veronica? Veronica is a therapist now, surprisingly. After her divorce, she went back to school, got a psychology degree, and now works with abuse survivors. We're not close, but we're cordial. She sends birthday cards. I send them back. We've reached a detente, if not forgiveness. My phone rings. It's Harrison Webb. Lily, I have some news, he says. Remember that building in Manhattan your grandmother owned? The one we've been leasing? Yes. The tenant's lease is up and they're not renewing. I think you should claim the space for your firm. It's prime real estate, perfect location, and it's yours anyway. I smile. Even in death, grandmother is still taking care of me. Do it, I say. Start the process. Chen Legal is going to New York. After I hang up, I turn my chair to look out at the city skyline. Boston has been good to me, but New York is calling. New opportunities, new challenges, new territory to conquer. My sister once stole my red lipstick and every other thing she could take from me. She made me feel small and worthless and invisible. But I came back. I wore pink instead of competing for red. I built my own identity instead of fighting for scraps of hers. I found my power not in revenge, but in refusing to stay a victim. And now I have everything: success, love, independence, peace. While Veronica is still figuring out who she is without me to tear down. I pick up my phone and text James. Moving the firm to NYC, you in? His response comes immediately. Always, wherever you go, I go. I smile, close my laptop, and head home to my husband, my life, my hard-won happiness. The war's over, and I won. Not because I destroyed my enemy, but because I built something she could never take from me, myself.